So good evening, everyone. And yes, a very good morning to all our speakers and colleagues from the US who joined us for the forum today. To begin with, I would like to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule and join us for this biggest MBA and GMAT leadership forum today, hosted by Manya the Princeton Review. I've never seen such a strong panel of experts, all of them coming together and sharing their experiences, their views, their idea of and the value of global MBA. So I would again thank you all the speakers to come together for this platform. In the next 60 minutes, we will go through different sessions. Let me just take all of you through the sessions. We would first have a panel discussion followed by Q&A. This will be moderated by Aradhana Khetan. She's the founder and managing director for Manya the Princeton Review. And our eminent panelists include Amanda Carlson from Columbia Business School, Dr. Renuka from SP Jain Mumbai, Gaurav Srivastava from GMAT, Amanda Nautni from the Princeton Review, and Sudhanshu from North American Association of Indian Students. After the panel discussion, we would have a specific presentation, which is primarily targeting round one of the top MBA applications for the coming fall 23 season. This will be presented by Charu Sethi. She's the head of admissions for product and delivery, Manya the Princeton Review. And she'll be supported by Stephen, who's also the director for Lumiere Education. Following that, we would have another presentation by Amanda from Princeton Review, Strategies to Score a Good GMAT Score. And then another presentation, which is Changing Face of Manya's GMAT by Vineet Khanna, who's the head of test prep at Manya the Princeton Review. And finally, would have the closing remarks, as well as the next step for aspiring students from Himanshu Kishore. So not wasting any more time, Aradhana, over to you to start the panel discussion and invite our panelists.
Thank you, Gaurav. So I'll dive right in. I think our audience here would, who are aspiring to pursue a management degree, would want to know, especially from the deans of two of the leading business schools globally, what is the value of an MBA today post-COVID? Is it still the same? Does it hold the same value that a traditional MBA earlier held, or have people moved on to more alternative MBAs as a preference? I know there are lots more cohort-based MBAs, experiential, shorter-term MBAs, hybrid MBAs. So Amanda, if you'd like to take a shot at it, and then Dr. Renuka, your views on the same, please.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much for allowing us the privilege of joining this panel. We really appreciate everyone's time and look forward to hearing my fellow panelists' thoughts as well. Based on certainly application volume, our application volume is about the same as it was pre-pandemic at Columbia Business School, meaning that I think certainly we've weathered the storm very well of the pandemic in terms of continuing opportunities for our students to have experiential learning opportunities, in-person learning opportunities, and of course, at the height of the pandemic, doing still some hybrid learning. I think one of the things that has changed, but in a really exciting way, are some of the areas of study, the academic areas of study that are getting a lot more attention, not just from the prospective student audience, and our current students, but also from our faculty in terms of the research that they're conducting and then how that translates into the classroom. So thinking about during the pandemic, all of the needs for attention to healthcare delivery, healthcare payments, providers, hospitals, etc. Thinking about climate change as well. One of the things that I would love to be able to point out specifically about kind of Columbia's program is a climate change and business program that our Dean Kosis Maglaris is really keenly focused on. And this climate change program obviously the climate change poses a significant challenge and also opportunities for business. And so thinking about how an MBA with the core foundational skills that our students can learn really could be helpful in this area in terms of identifying and implementing solutions to mitigate or even reverse some of the issues of climate change that I think we've really had our attention drawn to over the past few years. I think that the demand for an MBA is going to continue to be strong. I think we go through cycles where you see really it's more noise in the press and the media about, oh, the MBA is really, this is like this hot degree right now. Oh, the MBA has lost its luster and nobody wants to get an MBA. I think, again, the MBA has shown that it will weather the course, and those core foundational skills of statistics, accounting, marketing, leadership are really fundamental to success of many business leaders. And I love the fact that now we continue to see people with even more diverse backgrounds coming into our classes. So more engineers, more people from media, people who have these real hard transferable skills that can only serve to be enhanced with an MBA. So I'm certainly bullish on the MBA and the value of business education. But looking forward to hearing what our other deans have to say.
Dr. Renuka?
Yeah, Radha, and thanks for having me over. It's a real pleasure joining this group. I completely agree with Amanda, though we come from totally different places on the globe. I would say that there is still a demand. Applications are coming in as they were. There is as much of an interest as there was earlier. I would also like to say that, one of the things that frankly surprised us was that in the last 2 years, our placements have been extremely, extremely good. In fact, our 2020, 21, and now 22 placements, or rather, 21, 22 placements probably been better than any time before, a couple of years even before 2020. So, and we all know that it's a cycle. Good placements, people want to apply to. That said, I think one of the things that has happened is the focus of what we teach in class, how we design a curriculum has and is still undergoing some change. And I think we are putting in a lot more of what the impact COVID has had on all of us, particularly technology and data. And I find that the interest in technology, interest in product management has phenomenally gone up. And that we see as a big change coming in with the current batch, which has joined us, whom I'm teaching currently, and there's a far more interest. Another interest that we find is very high is on sustainability. And this year, in fact, from last year, there has been this huge push we have given internally, whether it's a campus or whether it's a curriculum on sustainability, and also involving students in it. And students appreciate it, recruiters as well appreciate it. So those are two things, I think, to your question, Aradhana, what changes you see, that have happened. But the interest definitely is there. I don't think the sheen has gone away by far. Of course, there is a 2-year MBA and there's a 1-year MBA. And so those are choices, of course, are left to the life stage of an individual and what they want to do. But the interest still remains. People do still see value in it.
And Amanda, could you talk about your placements at Columbia? Because really the value of the MBA is eventually in the placements that you get. So it's nice to hear that SP Jain got the best placements ever. But how was it at Columbia for you?
And again, I think Dr. Renuka said it's the different programs halfway around the world from each other. But yes, absolutely. We had, I think what Poets and Quants had also called the shiniest job report to match our shiny new buildings that we have at Columbia. So we had 94% placement within 3 months after graduation last year. The top 2 employers were McKinsey and BCG, and nearly 20% of our class went into media and technology as well. So I would also echo that interest, in addition to kind of sustainability and climate change, also into kind of the data analytics piece, and certainly a strong interest in product management. As one who reviews applications, that's something that we're seeing an increasing interest in. But the career management team has done a phenomenal job in terms of, again, the relationships that they've had with different companies for many, many, many decades at this point, and obviously fielding requests from alums to help fill roles that the alums may have at their companies. The career management team is just amazing, seasoned group of professionals who work on advising, interview skills, consulting areas, and then the kind of that career education piece. And they've done a phenomenal job, again, resulting in that 94% placement rate after graduation. And we're still on par, as my understanding, same for the class of 2022, which is really exciting.
Excellent. So it's reassuring to know that the traditional MBA still has a lot of value, and that's been revalidated both in the number of applications as well as the placements that you guys have seen. And of course, any organization adapts and innovates. So the curriculum has adapted, but all those on this call today who may have been wondering should put their fears aside. Has there been any change in the kind of applications that you're seeing? And more importantly, I think, what's the profile of the applicant that you look for? How should our students here help themselves stand out in the tornado of applications that schools are receiving now? Dr. Renuka?
Yeah, so, I think profiles, by and large, I'm not sure have changed too much, frankly. That's not what we are seeing. But it's been happening over the last few years. I don't think it has happened in the last year or so, but over the last about 4-5 years, we see a far higher application base coming from startups, people who have become entrepreneurs and they started their own business or work for a small company, which is a startup. And we know that in India, there's a big, huge wave of entrepreneurship that is on at the moment in the last few years also. So we see a lot more applications coming in from applicants who are, from small companies, but have a huge and deep experience in hands-on working. So that kind of is what I see. In terms of diversity, India being India, we do see a lot more engineers applying. That has been the trend. But fortunately, we now do see people applying from other fields as well, arts and science and liberal arts too, and that's very extremely heartening. And rather than missing the second question, what was the second
question? Was how does a student stand out? What are you looking for in an applicant? That's the key question here today, right? How do I get admission?
Yeah, so Aradhana, it's I don't think anything's changed in that. I think people just need to be very genuine. Write exactly what they have done. Too much of camouflaging, too much flowery language. Really, I think we've been around for too long to, not see that. The language, the articulation, I think has to be very grounded, and that's how we see it. Share real experiences that have surprised you. This is what I would tell any applicant. Talk about something that you excel in. I think by and large, Aradhana, that's how I would look at how anybody should. I think being honest and grounded is what I would say.
What was your acceptance ratio?
For our acceptance, as in you're talking about the application to.
Correct.
Okay, so we fill in about, we are a small business school. We are not a very large business school. So we have 240 or 250 applications, and we select them from almost 25,000 applications.
Oh, wow.
So you can do the math. It's a very small conversion.
Okay. Thank you, Renuka. Amanda?
Okay, so I am humbled and awed by that because I have no idea how you get through that many files. Our pool is only around 6,000, and we have a graduating class of about 700. So our acceptance rate is a little higher than yours is. What I can share about the applicant pool, I'm not sure that much has necessarily changed over the past few years in terms of kind of the input. But again, I think the aspirational piece and the output and where people want to go after graduation has, again, as I just mentioned a little earlier, has modified just a little bit. And while yes, McKinsey and BCG were the top two employers, I think more on the applicant side, what we are hearing that people are more interested in working in product management, in data analytics, in tech. Now, they may change their mind once they get to school and kind of follow the herd who might think about pursuing consulting, but we're not seeing as many who on the way in during the applicant stage are saying, gosh, I'd really like to do investment banking, as we would have all the way back in the early 2000s, just as an example, or sales and trading. I mean, that just doesn't exist anymore in terms of placement or interest. So I'm not really sure necessarily that the applicant pool has changed too much. I think in terms of the focus on the applications, we are still one of the schools that is requiring the GMAT or the executive assessment as part of our application process. And for Columbia, and I'm just going to speak for us, I think that that's a really important part of our application process. We have a range in terms of the scores that we accept. Last year, I think the range of the class, I believe, was 550 to 780. It might have been a 790. Also could have been about a 530, but roughly somewhere in that range. The average score was somewhere in the 720s. Now, part of the reason that we are really keenly focused on the GMAT or the executive assessment has to do with thinking about the strength of the overall applicant pool and then the individuals that we are bringing in. We still continue to be delighted with the predictive capabilities of the GMAT and the executive assessment, and knowing that these candidates are going to be strong academically. They have kind of the rote skills to be trained by our faculty and to get through the program with hopefully as little struggle as possible. An MBA is a very difficult degree to pursue, but we want to make sure that we have very rigorous standards in place academically in the application process. So we are certainly a school that is going to continue to require the GMAT or the executive assessment. Now, with that in mind, I know that people have concerns. Prospective students often express concerns. Well, I only have a 720. Well, a 720, I'm not going to be concerned about someone's ability to get through the program versus a 740 or a 750. There, again, we know that these are smart individuals. And there is also an element of luck, both in the application process, I think, as well as in the GMAT in terms of who you're bringing to that test on a given day. So my recommendation would certainly be to give yourself well advanced notice and practice in terms of preparing for the GMAT. And if you need to take it 1, 2, or 3 times to do the very best that you can and also have that element of luck on your side, then that's what you should do. That's what I did when I was preparing a very, very long time ago. Now, if you're also someone who excels in the integrated reasoning piece, and as far as Columbia goes, if you want to take the executive assessment, that is an assessment that we are absolutely thrilled with too. And we love the fact that the integrated reasoning score is actually wrapped into the total score that we receive. So I think for us, I want to make sure to stress that the GMAT is, or executive assessment, standardized test is an important element, but it is not the only element. I think Dr. Renuka really said it so well when you were talking about that element of authenticity as part of kind of call it the softer side of your application. And so really being real in the language that you use as you're preparing your essays. I think also sharing that you're realistic in terms of your expectations about what our program can provide for you. So if you're coming from, I'm going to make this up as like a silly example, but if you're doing Teach for India and you've said all of a sudden, like, I want to go work in private equity. Well, there needs to be some type of understanding that there need to be perhaps some intermediate steps before before one may be able to secure that type of a job. So that, yes, having like the authentic response that maybe that's what you'd like, but also realistic expectations that the programs can only deliver so much, and there may be some intermediate steps that an applicant would need to take in order to realistically achieve goals that one might present in the application. I also mentioned that element of luck piece, and I don't want that to be dismissed. I mean, Dr. Renuka was saying 25,000 applications, right? So, I mean, that's again a different animal than we're experiencing with only 6,000. There are people who we want to accept into the program, but we just don't have space, right? And so the element of luck comes into play when we're talking about the timing of the application. When are you applying? Are you applying early on in a cycle? Are you applying later on in a cycle? Maybe when all of the seats may be filled. So I would really encourage applicants to pay attention to kind of the life cycle of an application from the school's perspective. Do schools have rolling admissions? Do they have rounds? And really think strategically about when you can get together the strongest application, and then what that might mean in terms of timing when you're applying from the school side. So there may be all of the seats in the class that are available or fewer seats in the class that are available. So I would really encourage people to think about that aspect as well. And also the schools fit for you. And so getting to know the schools by either in-person visits or virtual visits. I think each school also likes to know that you've done research on its program to figure out why you might be a good fit, and not only what you get from the program, but what you can contribute to your classmates as well.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very helpful. And Dr. Renuka, last question for you before I move on to some of our other panelists. That I'm assuming, especially with 25,000 applications, the GMAT's an important part of what you look for in a candidate.
Oh yes, definitely.
Because I know during the pandemic, a lot of schools went test optional to cope with the challenge of the times. But it's good to know that 2 of the top B schools globally are still giving that a lot of weightage in deciding who comes into their class. Gaurav, I think it'll help our students today to hear from you now on what is the current status of the GMAT. How has it changed, if at all, because of the pandemic? Is it back offline now or online? What are plans going ahead? What are measures that you may have taken to ensure that the students have a seamless testing experience? And most importantly, what are you doing to uphold the integrity of the test taking process for our students and our B schools who give so much weightage to this test?
Aradhana, Gaurav, if you don't mind, I'd just like to, compliment GMAT for one thing. When 2020, when COVID struck, I remember a lot of applicants reaching out to us and wondering how they're going to make it, how they're going to give the test, how they're going to give the exam. And we did reach out to GMAT saying, what are you going to do? And, how are they going to cope? And I think you gave an option at that time. Initially, I'm sure it must have been a struggle like it was for all of us, but you all gave that option of, giving it from home with all the caveats and things. So I think compliments to you all, how you turned it around. That was really beneficial for us.
Thank you, Dr. Kamath. That's very nice of you to mention. And Aradhana, I'll be happy to share some of the changes that have been happening since COVID struck. So when actually COVID hit us back in 2020, no one was prepared, right? And we actually thought for a moment that it's going to last for a couple of weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And that's the irony, because we were not aware as to what is the gravity of the situation. I would say that our product team did a great job in coming out with an online option that was available for candidates to be able to take the test from home. So we realized at that point of time, when test centers were shutting down, that candidates can't move. Candidate mobility is an issue. Most workplaces shut down. So people went back to their own towns and cities. People who were working in larger cities went back to their own hometowns. How would one actually write the exam? And if you don't write the exam, how do you apply to a B school? So the product team worked very quickly, very innovatively, and we managed to launch the online version The first one had a few less bells and whistles, but we did manage to get everything introduced within the online version that's available in the test center version. And after passing a few hiccups, we noticed that the trend in India was actually the most encouraging globally. Almost close to 40% candidates in India were opting for the online option. And this itself is proof that, it's convenience not only for candidates, but it also helps schools, because you have your deadlines and you want people to be able to apply. And just because you can't write a particular exam, you shouldn't end up missing out on the entire year. So we took this situation very seriously. We worked hard and we made sure that candidates got the online option. It was as convenient as possible. Another thing I would like to mention, I've been with GMAT now for over 10 years. We've always traditionally used a passport as a form of ID. But for the online option, we also introduced the Aadhaar ID as a form of identification for candidates, because we realized that, if you're sitting in a tier 2, tier 3 city, it's going to be very difficult for you to come back and apply for a passport and then write the GMAT exam. So, of course, we had to ensure that the safety norms were in place and that there was no scope of anything going wrong in terms of identification. We made it absolutely foolproof. And again, we were very happy to realize that a number of candidates started opting for the Aadhaar ID instead of the passport. Most of them did not have a passport. So I think the fact that makes me feel happy today is that you could be sitting anywhere in India, in any town, any city, in any corner of the country. And most candidates, most people already have an Aadhaar ID. Most of us have it. All you have to do is use that ID and you can give the GMAT online from wherever you are. And to answer your other question, Radhana, while we had introduced it initially temporarily because we thought, this is going to be something that candidates are going to require till the pandemic gets better, we've also realized that this is something that we're going to look at as a more permanent solution, because no one has the answer about how and when the pandemic is going to end. And there could be successive waves, and we just don't want that candidates should have to suffer on account of this. So we are going to continue with the online GMAT option. And this option is exactly the same as what's available in the test center in terms of the exam format, optional breaks, and all of that. And for a number of candidates, it's also been a very comfortable testing experience because it's available 24 hours a day. You can choose your time slot. Some people might want to take it early morning. Some people prefer late evening. You don't have to travel to a test center. Safety and security of your home. Coming to the second part of your question in terms of integrity, we take that very, very seriously. And there are two parts to this. One is, of course, in terms of security. Some of the candidates on the call today might be aware that there was a security breach a while ago. We heard about it from the cyber cell unit in the Delhi police, and we worked very closely with them because we take this extremely seriously. And we proactively went out and ensured that the cyber security folks had whatever information they required from our end to make sure that anybody who was trying to use unfair means was identified. And I think we, at our end, canceled scores of 133 candidates globally, out of which 108 were from India. And my piece of advice to candidates today would be, of course, I'm sure nobody wants to take such shortcuts and everybody has a high level of integrity. But do keep in mind that, not only have these people been identified by the local authorities, their details have been shared with schools globally. Admission teams globally now have the details of the candidates who had used unfair means. The police has it. They're taking criminal action against these candidates. So I would say that's something that people should keep in mind, that if anybody approaches them or they think there's some kind of a shortcut, it's not worth it. And please don't even fall into this trap. The exam is something that you can easily crack with the right amount of prep. I mean, you're talking to some of the best people here on this call who can tell you all about the prep. And the other part I wanted to touch upon, since you mentioned, Aradhana, on test optionality, I think this started back in 2020 when COVID had hit us. There was uncertainty amongst schools. In the US, there were a number of schools that became test optional. Important to mention here that test optionality was more for the local US candidates, candidates who were based in the US. That was not so much for international candidates. So that is the first bit. Second bit, most of the good schools, the highly ranked schools, like the ones you have over here on the call today, have never ever compromised in terms of quality of intake. So while GMAT is just one of the many parameters, that is something in which schools have not compromised. So today, if you're looking at getting into a good program, yes, you have to work hard. You have to crack the GMAT as part of the process, amongst a number of other things. Test optionality, and if we talk about India in itself, I think there's hardly been any B school that has used test optionality. SP Jain, Mumbai is over here, and I know a number of other top programs in India, whether it's the executive IIMs, ISB, they have not at all been test optional or done anything in terms of looking at compromising the entry of candidates. And last bit I wanted to mention was that in terms of expansion, the GMAT, while it's used globally across B schools, even within India, candidates should be aware that AICTE, which is the All India Council for Technical Education, recognizes GMAT as one of the 6 exams that you can write for applying to a PGDM program. So while you look at the local entrance exams and the Indian entrance exams, you can also use the GMAT to apply to any B school of your choice within India.
So there has been an increase, Gaurav, in the number of test takers globally, and as well as an increased acceptance by B schools for the GMAT as an exam?
Absolutely. And in fact, we saw a huge shift happen in end of 2020, early 2021. I think as soon as the US election results were out, I think by December 2020, we saw a huge upswing. And Q1 of 2021, which is January, February, March, we saw the highest ever number of test taking that took place during that quarter. This is partly due to the new shift in the political change that took place in the United States of America, more welcoming towards international candidates. I think it was also the pent-up demand. A number of candidates had kind of, postponed their plans and they deferred their plans for going to a B school. So we saw that flow come in. But we are full up, yes. We are seeing a very positive momentum and numbers have definitely grown.
Thank you, Gaurav. And I think with now the underlying importance of the GMAT, everybody would be curious to know, how do we crack the GMAT? So we'll turn to our GMAT expert, Amanda. And I know while you have a more detailed session, Amanda, on taking our students through test taking tips, but I think it'll be great for them to know there's a lot of anxiety around test taking. So how does the Princeton Review Program specifically help students break this test taking anxiety and help them maximize their score?
So our goal basically is to get students familiar with the test inside out. So we have tools that reflect the adaptive nature of the test. So your practice tests are administered and scored in the same way that the regular test would be. We go over all of the content that's on the test and basically try to implement systematic approaches so that there aren't really any surprises on test day. You see this type of question, this is the kind of response that you're going to have to it. And really making sure that students have the knowledge base that they need for the GMAT, but also that they have some strategy and have a plan going in. So it does help remove a lot of that anxiety when they've taken 10 practice tests and they've done drill after drill, as many as they really want to do. We've got 4,400 drills in our online program. So, they can take as many of them as they want to. And so having that familiarity with the test and having someone to guide you through the process can remove a lot of the anxiety. And, we're experienced with that because the test anxiety certainly isn't limited just to the GMAT. And so we account for that and we are able to help students through that with preparation and also just sort of being there as a support system to make sure that they feel ready and that they are able to swallow that anxiety a little bit and have a plan for coping with it. but yeah, our goal really is to put together an adaptive program that targets their needs, and gives them the ability to be completely familiar with the test going into their testing experience.
And in your experience, for some of our students who've been out of touch with test taking and academics, is your program going to get them ready to ace this test?
Yeah, we have, obviously a lot of GMAT students have been out of university for a while and been in the workforce. So some of those types of skills, fade after a while. So we're accustomed to working with that kind of student. And so in addition to the course, we've also got supplemental sessions. So things like explanation sessions and office hours where they can come in with homework questions, or they can, if there's a particular concept that they're rusty on, they can come in and work with an instructor to get up to speed on that a little bit. We have our course materials that actually include a couple of pre-work manuals that will cover, say, fundamentals of arithmetic, for example, or the grammatical rules that are tested, so that they are able to study the actual content. And then in class, we can review that content and look at the question types and the strategy. And we have, advanced question sessions. So it's, outside of just the scheduled course meetings, we have a lot of support materials to help anyone review material that they may have, just sort of not, frankly, not needed in their work life. And anything that they might be rusty on, we can get them back up to speed.
Thank you, Amanda. I know you're covering the specific Princeton Review strategies and pedagogy a little later today in our session.
Mm-hmm.
We'll move to Sudhanshu. Sudhanshu, thank you for joining us amidst a very busy and hectic schedule. I think it'll be great first if you could tell our students what exactly the NAIS is to begin with, since they may be unfamiliar that there's something so fantastic out there for them. And then, you're on ground zero out there and you've seen firsthand the trials and tribulations of students who are on ground trying to chase the American dream, as they say. What advice would you give them as they navigate their careers through the pursuit of a management degree?
Thank you so much for having me. And I don't know, I'm sorry for my Wi-Fi internet. I had to actually leave my place to get better Wi-Fi. So I profusely apologize. But I just want for Indian international students, what the current dynamic is that you have very limited engagement at a campus level with your college affiliated Indian clubs. But nationally, you have no source of kind of avenue of resources / information plus knowledge sharing to get as you transition to your time as an international student in the United States. And we want to make that easy for you. So currently we have over 23,000 members, all international students. We have about a couple of thousand alumni as well who guide these international students. We affiliate ourselves with over 116 university Indian student associations. So there's a high chance that anyone on this call and whatever college or university they go to will have a local affiliate there on campus, on ground. And our goal is basically be there. What do I mean by that? If you have a situation with your F1 visa, we're going to try to get you, some information wherever we can. If the situation requires you, let's say your I-20 gets canceled and you need some counsel support, but you can't afford an attorney, we've got you. If, for example, you don't have enough funds, aid, etc., and you need some food assistance, we've got you. We helped over 5,000 Indian students during COVID, giving them direct food, rental, legal assistance, and raised upwards of $150,000. And what we're trying to make sure is that while there is a support group by the university, they have a limited capacity. While the consulates can try to give you some information, their capacity also is very limited. Whereas we believe that because we singularly focus on Indian international students, we can make sure that in any situation, circumstance, we can be there for them. And most of all, we're all volunteers, so we understand the situation that they're going through, making it easier for them to connect in that case. And if there's something that I really want to focus on is, look, you all have been preparing really, really hard on getting those tests in. You've been preparing really, really hard on those applications. And I wish I could tell you that, the hardest part is over if you get your admit letter. I don't want to scare you away at all. I just want to prepare you and tell you that the continuation also is the transition is also very difficult. And we just want to make that easier for you. You're going to be overwhelmed as soon as you thought the application process was overwhelming. Just make sure, wait until you get your I-20 and all the paperwork that you have to think about, and then all the transitioning that you have to think about while you're also trying to find a house to stay in, while you're also trying to find a suitable internet connectivity, while you're also trying to just go through this culture shock. Whoa, Americans drink a lot of ice with their water. So it's these little things that get so overwhelming that we just want to support you with. And right now I'm currently on tour, going and aiming for admitted students to be able to give them that assistance in that way.
Sudhanshu, I think what you guys are doing is incredible. I know when I was in the States back then, there was no such support, and it's invaluable. So kudos to you and whoever else is behind this organization to give students that helping hand, especially in these uncertain times. We know how challenging it can be. So thank you for that, Sudhanshu. Before we wrap up, there's a last couple of questions, but I'd request people in the audience to put their questions on the chat if there is anything that they would like to ask any of the panelists. But before that, Dr. Renuka, I know that you naturally have a bias, but for those who are considering an MBA in India versus a global MBA, what would your advice to them be on how do they make that choice?
A difficult one, Ratna, for me to respond to. But I think each of us has to assess where we are in our journey. It's a lot of money. There's a lot of money that goes out from the family of Indian students because it's not inexpensive studying in the US. And hence it has to be a call that a family makes, and I can say that for a lot of families I know. But having said that, and being an academician, and I've been an academician for the last 18 years after I shifted from the corporate sector, I can say that the top schools in India are pedagogically and the method of teaching content, I would say, as good as any of the schools, because our students do a 3-week and a 1-month immersion in the US, and they come back saying the same thing. It's a call that each individual has to make on their own, because how much you want to invest in yourself and what is the nature of investment you want to make, I think that depends on your situation. It's very difficult, Aradhana, for me to be prescriptive about this by far, and I don't think it's fair to be. But I would say that the top schools in India are pretty much there as far as the teaching learning in a classroom is concerned. We use all the case study. Our school uses case studies from all the top schools like Harvard, Ivy, and INSEAD, etc. We use simulations. We are the partners, Harvard's partners in India for teaching simulation to academicians. So that said, I think it's a choice an individual will make. You put me in a spot there.
There's a question from the audience on the flexibility of the GMAT score in your admissions process. What's the weightage you give, and especially for the Indian B schools? Do you want to take that, Dr. Renuka?
It's difficult for me to say how much weightage we give, because that's an internal dimension we use. But definitely it has a big weightage, because we give weightage for your school education, your 10th, 12th, In fact, at SPJIMR, we give weightage for even your every year of college, the undergrad education as well. So plus then you have your competitive score, your GMAT score. So it's not going to be possible for me to share the exact weight, but definitely it does have a very, very important part of it. And sectional cutoffs are also there. So that's important.
Okay. I think that's helpful to know. And I think since you said that you give a lot of weightage to the GPA and the undergrad degree, I know that anecdotally that there are some schools in India, such as the Masters Union, the newer B schools that have come up, which are actually even encouraging those who don't have an undergrad degree to apply basis the strength of their GMAT score as well as their career experience, their work profile. Have you seen such kind of applications, and would you be open to people who chose to, walk down the entrepreneurial route and not pursue an undergrad degree and then take a plunge for the GMAT?
Interesting question, Aradhana. Actually, what we do is we set apart such applications, and we have a committee that assesses each of these students to see what they are. But that said, I think that the mindsets are not easy to change. Even within the school, there are processes, and we have to be fair to people and ensure the process is fair to everybody. But we do look at outliers like this. We look at what is the kind of experience they have, what have they been doing, and I'm glad that schools like Masters Union are doing what they do, because I completely subscribe to that way of thinking, because we have to be more open about learning going ahead. But it's not an easy change to make for an institution. But what we do is we look at it case to case.
Yeah, I have a follow-on question to that, but I want to get Amanda's views first on what I asked, and then I'll come back to the emphasis on learning. So Amanda, what are your, what's the weightage that Columbia gives on the GMAT? How flexible are you about the score? And what kind of alternative profiles can apply with or without an undergrad degree with the GMAT score?
Right, so the GMAT is just one part of the academic portion of which we consider. When we're assessing applications, we're looking at one kind of professional promise and what your experiences have been. We look for something that we call personal characteristics, and we love to know kind of what drives applicants, what makes them tick, what really motivates them, what do they do outside of work and school. But the GMAT, it is important. Look, it is an important component, as I mentioned before, in the sense that we want to know that people are going to be capable of doing the work in a very rigorous, academically rigorous, highly quantitative program. In terms of kind of flexibility, we also look at people's individual scores and then look relative to the larger pool as well. So, there are certain averages that we do want to maintain, but again, you bring in an entire class, which ends up becoming whatever the average is for scores. So we just want people to do the best that they can and take the time to study and prepare as best you possibly can. You want to always submit an application with the highest test score of which you as an individual are capable. In terms of flexibility, we consider all applicants on a case-by-case basis. We have accepted people who do not have undergraduate degrees before. They are few and far between. I want to be very clear about that. And there needs to be some really overarching, compelling reason for going direct from perhaps work to a graduate program while bypassing that undergraduate opportunity. So we would want to really probably meet the person in person or on Zoom and really have them make a compelling case before we would lean to admit someone who did not attend undergrad.
And as a follow-on question, supposing someone has a gap or a break in their career in terms of their employment, how is that viewed?
Do you mind me just jumping right back in there?
Absolutely. Go ahead. Amanda.
Okay. No, gap, especially over the last 2 years, if this has kind of taught us nothing, is life is not linear. Your professional career is not linear. There are going to be fits and starts, and just explain. And again, use that kind of authentic voice to explain what decisions one may have made or what happened to someone where the decision was taken away from them. To just explain what your personal circumstances are. And again, how that kind of fits into what the trajectory, professional trajectory has been. But please, 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 if someone has been laid off or you needed to take time to take care of your family, we are normal humans on the admissions committee, and just be as open, I think, and candid as you are comfortable being, because, well, again, I said life is not linear, and things happen. And don't be embarrassed or shy to share, because I think the more open and transparent people are, the more kind of the stories are going to resonate with a member of the admissions committee. So if there's a gap, so be it. There's a gap, but please make sure you use that authentic voice to share why.
And can you talk, Amanda, about the scholarship opportunities that Columbia offers?
Sure. We have a combination of need-based aid as well as merit-based fellowships. I hate to ever say, like, go to the website, but on the financial aid portion of our website, there's a pretty comprehensive list of what is available. Again, some is based on need. Some of the financial opportunities are based on merit. Many have an academic component, but some are given to, like, people from certain geographies or certain professional backgrounds by particular donors who would like the money given in a particular way. So again, I think probably on many of the schools' websites, not just Columbia, but on many of the schools' websites, there may be information about the different financing packages that are available. And also, don't be shy, just call us and ask. If you've got specific questions about your own background, we have wonderful admissions counselors. We have a general apply email address. And so don't be shy. That's what we're here for, to try to kind of demystify this process as we can, and help you along in what can be, I know, a very stressful, anxiety-producing situation.
And Dr. Renuka, could you talk about the scholarship options that SPGen offers?
Yeah, we do give scholarships to people who can establish that there is a requirement, largely for economically, for economic reasons. The whole thing is that our whole approach to this is nobody should be denied an education because they can't afford to pay for it today. That said, we also have tie-ups with all the leading banks, and we are all the time negotiating with the banks to give interest-free loans, easy installments. So we work both ways. So we do both of them.
And we are running out of time, but I do want, both of your thoughts, because coming back to the point that you made on learning, Dr. Renuka, on how it's great that there are some schools out there that are encouraging learning opportunities for, everyone, despite their background. And Amanda said the same. But there's always this toss-up in, the rat race that we are all running in the world between scores versus learning and career satisfaction versus jobs and placements. So any parting thoughts or advice to our audience here from both of you before we move on to the next session?
So Aradhana, your question is on, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what exactly you want.
It's more a philosophical question.
Okay.
So that, often in trying to get the best scores, we'll take courses that will maximize our GPA versus what we love learning, or we'll choose jobs that pay us more versus where our heart may lie. How does one walk that fine line? And how do you support your students in making these choices when they come on campus to you? What will help our students decide that SPGen or Columbia are the places that they should spend the next 1 to 2 years of their life, because they'll get that all-rounded?
Yeah. Okay. So, Aradhana, what we have a slightly different curriculum where, as part of a compulsory part of the curriculum, is that the students have to go to the rural part of the country and do a social internship. Apart from the summers, or we have an autumns, actually, we don't have summers, we have autumns. And during the summer, they go to the rural part of the country. And we have tie-ups with almost about 500 NGOs in the country. And so the whole idea is for them to learn how to apply management principle in unstructured environments. That's one. The other one we have of our students they are mentors, and that is also a compulsory course. It's defined as a course, but there's really not much of a classroom learning. But what we call as non-classroom learning, they mentor underprivileged schools from around our business school here, and we have almost about 500 kids from around our school where our students go and mentor them. And this whole and these are just two things that we do, which I think we're very proud of, and I think most other schools are not doing or don't do it at the scale at which we do it. But the whole idea is to develop a whole person. And you asked a very important question, because we have a lot of students who come and keep asking us, at a personal level, when I'm teaching in class, between breaks, they'll come and say, I'm not sure whether I'm the right place. People are so much more successful than I am, and should I do this? My heart tells me, but I have a family to look after because I've taken a loan, and whether I should. And we of course try to understand each situation, but the idea is, if you're really hard pressed and there are dependents and you need to go and do things, do a job or take up a role or an assignment or a job which is not really where your heart is, do it for a couple of years, secure yourself, earn the money, because after graduating from SPJMR, you're sure to get a great, a job with good money, and then branch off to whatever you do. However, but if you can afford to follow your heart immediately, please do it as soon as you can. Nothing in the world is going to wait for you. And as you grow older, responsibilities are only going to get bigger, heavier on you, and your risk-taking abilities are going to come down. So do it as soon as possible. Just take the plunge is what we'd say. And we of course have incubation cell, we have a cell for entrepreneurial development. So we provide all those opportunities as much as people would want. So that's from me.
Thank you, Dr. Rinpa. Amanda, any thoughts from you?
I have lots of thoughts. I echo what Dr. Renuka said, but I think there's something kind of taking a step back. In some ways, getting in, this is going to sound a little crazy, but like getting in is not the hard part. It's actually going through the program. And when you're going through an MBA program, there are going to be a lot of high highs and there are going to be a lot of low lows. And so trying not to get sucked in to those, celebrate the high highs, certainly, but those low lows, know that it's a journey, it's a process. Those low lows are part of the learning process, and try to embrace everything, every opportunity that you can at business school, because just as soon as you've started, it feels like you're going to blink and you're going to miss it. It's like somebody once said the phrase to me that the days are long and the years are short. And so the opportunity of an MBA program, it goes by really, really quickly. So what I would encourage people, again, lean into those high highs and those low lows and just say yes to every opportunity that you possibly can. You're in this wonderful, amazing, diverse learning environment. And so say yes to those opportunities and find value in every conversation that you're going to have from the people that you have a lot in common with, and especially to the people that you don't have anything really in common with. And sometimes those are the people who are going to become your best friends, and really, again, embrace all of those opportunities. I think one thing that Columbia does in particular pretty well is we have something called grade non-disclosure, which is not to say that people don't have to study hard. Of course you should study hard. We have a forced curve within the class, but students do not have to reveal their grades to employers as one is going through the recruiting process. And we have that specifically to try to take the pressure off of students who may not come from a quantitative background and who may be worried, oh, should I not take these quantitative electives because I have this fear of failing? Lean into what you don't know. This is why you are at school. There is a lot of focus from the student affairs team and from the dean's office on mental health and well-being. And so they have a lot of support mechanisms in place to really help our students through what can be a very arduous learning process. So I think a lot of the business schools are paying attention to students' mental health and well-being, especially over the past couple of years. but enjoy the opportunity, embrace the unknown. And again, you're probably not going to get a second crack at a learning experience, again, kind of like an MBA. So just enjoy it as much as possible.
Thank you. That was actually, both those things that you shared about the schools are really heartening to know that there's so much out there for students who want to pursue the traditional path as well as the holistic path, and there's tons of support. Thank you. This has been a very, very engaging conversation for all of us, I'm sure for our audience as well. And over to Gaurav from our team for the next session.
Thank you, Aradhana, and thank you all the panelists. I think it was a great session. I would now like to invite Charu and Stephen to start their session. Charu, over to you.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Hope all of us on the call are doing great. My name is Charu Sethi, and I take care of admissions, servicing, and product at Manya Education. This session is about the final target of every GMAT student, admission into a top B school. We are going to be discussing about one of the ways to get admit into a top B school, which is through targeting round 1 of MBA applications. I'll need to share my screen, so please give me a minute. Yes, so targeting round 1 of applications for top global MBA programs. What exactly is round 1? Now, most of the top 100 MBA colleges in the world have roughly 2 to 3 application clusters, which are referred to as rounds. These are clustered largely around the first 10 days of September. So the round 1 for fall 23 will fall in the first 10 days of September of year 22, the best time to apply. These are roughly referred to as rounds, and that's the first set of application deadlines. Now, who should target round 1? Is it for everybody? Maybe not. If you look at it, this applies to largely 2 sets of people. The well-prepared candidates, the ones who have their GMAT score in hand, who have their resumes ready, who have the letter of recommendations coming shortly their way. They have started writing their essays, better revising them. And then the second set of applicants, which are in any way overly represented for that particular college. This will include the IT male engineers from India and possibly CAs from India who are in audit and taxation jobs. These are largely, the pool of candidates who have where the applications are more vis-a-vis the seats. Let us also understand what are the benefits of applying to round 1 applicants. Clearly, this reflects interest in the college that the student is applying for. It tells the business schools that you are their first preference. Also, round 1 candidates are evaluated amongst the candidates who have applied to round 1. So your competition pool clearly is smaller. In addition to that, the applicants who are applying for round 1 are typically the ones who are applying for their dream colleges. And the ones who are applying for round 2 are the ones who have not got acceptance in the round 1 as well. So clearly, in any way, the competition pool becomes larger. And and which really marks the benefit for applying to round one colleges. Is there scope to apply for round one in every type of college, or to put this simply, what are the colleges that should be targeted for round one? Makes our next important question. M7, the top business colleges in the US, which include Harvard Business School, Wharton, MIT Sloan, the University of Chicago's Booth Business School, Wharton School at UPenn, and of course Columbia, which is present there in the panel here. Makes a lot of sense to apply to the M7 colleges for the round one. The second tier of colleges, which is the UCLA Anderson, UCLA Berkeley, a lot listed here, as you can see, Washington, Seattle, Foster. These are the colleges that one should target for the round one applications. Some European, good European colleges, top ranked European colleges like INSEAD, HEC Paris, London Business School, Oxford, Cambridge, etc. Also qualify for round one. There are Indian options like SP Jain here and ISB, where the students must apply for round one to secure a slight advantage. Now, so now we know what is round one, the benefits of applying to round one, what are the colleges that one could target possibly for applying to the round one applications. Let us understand, what does the round one application comprise? The components of the application are not very different from a typical application. This will include your academic documents, which is your official transcript scanned. It includes the official standardized test scores, which is IELTS, TOEFL, GRE, GMAT. The personal documents, very importantly, the resume, CV, the statement of purpose, the letters of recommendation, the video essays, online interviews, as the case may be. The extracurricular activities around leadership, collaboration, social impact, all form very important components or very intrinsic components, so to say, for the MBA application for round one. Let's study some of these, or let's briefly discuss some of these components for the MBA application. The most important one being the MBA resume. Now, the MBA resume is the first document that that comes in the eyes of any AdCom. It actually determines whether a reader continues to read the application out of interest or obligation, for that matter. So make sure your interest, your CV generates a lot of interest. Clearly, the one page or format is the most accepted for most of the universities. There are a few B schools who also accept the two-page format, which is readily available in the application materials for each school. The most important component of a resume is it should highlight why you. It should emphasize on your leadership potential. As Dr. Renuka said, what are your past credentials, why you, bring out the real character in the applicant that you are. Apart from the resume, the most important component of an MBA application is the MBA essays. So there is a reason why much is talked about MBA essays. We all speak lengths and breadths about these. The B schools want to know what makes an applicant unique, and that is why an MBA application essay makes the most important component of any application. It showcases what makes a candidate distinct. Is he driven by creativity? Is he driven by innovation? Does he have fresh ideas in mind? What are his specific goals? is all that coming through in the essay. It's a short space. We all know there are X number of words, and you have to convey. Again, you have to showcase your strengths through your resume. Your application essays need to be compelling, creative, and absolutely clear in what you have to say. I'll want to delve a little more on essays. There's something most of our candidates ask, and that forms a basis of of forming the MBA essays for most of the students we help in getting top admits. It's interesting to understand that every MBA essay has a common underlying factor. They all want to assess your career goals. It's the most critical aspect that one should identify even before attempting the MBA essays. Now, what are career goals? The career goals are the milestones people set to evaluate their progress against. The career goals are in your case, the career goals are largely your post-program goals. These are divided into short-term and long-term goals. The short-term goals would typically range between 3 to 5 years, and your long-term goals are 10 to 15 years. Your short-term goals could be something like, where do you want to be 5 years down the line? Or again, if you are a working professional, which companies or institutions are the ones that you want to work for? What will be the scope of work? When it comes to long-term goals, the essence of the long-term goals that needs to come through your essay will be, what is your vision? Is it aspirational? Is it pragmatic? And is it rooted into your prior experience? Another very important aspect for a career goal is that it must bridge the gap. It must it must tie in what you've been doing in the past and what you plan to do in the future, and how the admit or experience into the university you're aiming for will help you bridge that gap. That's exactly what is the question behind the question in each MBA essay. Each MBA essay poses. Further into the application process, a very important aspect is the MBA recommendations. Now, every college seeks a letter of recommendation, which is either from your current or from your past employer. A good letter discusses the applicant's qualities and characteristics using real examples to support the claims. Mostly there is a 4-question format that GMAT, which is a standard GMAT format. This largely ranges between 250 to 500 words. Each university has a specific has their specific requirements. I've listed down a link here that will where most of the business schools accept these days a common LOR format. And this is available on the GMAT website. Anybody who wants to seek further information can visit the GMAT website, and this information should be available there. These largely are the components for an MBA application. There is another very important aspect while applying for an MBA, which is really the underlying factor for most of for everything that makes your MBA docket, which is how well is your profile developed. I would like to hand it over to Stephen now to discuss a little bit more on the aspect of profile development while applying for MBA. Stephen is a co-founder and the director of Lumiere Education. This is an organization that is deeply, deeply invested in their passion for providing world-class research opportunities for the students. He's a PhD in organization development and from Harvard Business School, and also a BSc in science from Harvard University. This is over to you, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shara. And so great to have everyone here today. I'm going to be talking primarily about the profile and how you can direct what you're doing into the essay that you're giving. As Shara was saying, that essay component is so important for people to understand, like, what is the narrative, who's the person that I'm looking at, and really what are they going to be doing over the next few years? Like, why are you the person that I want to be investing in, that I want to have come back at the 25th year reunion? Because fundamentally that's what they're thinking about when they're making the acceptance. I'll just quickly say a little bit on my background as well, just to give a little context. So I help run Lumiere, which is all about kind of profile building, research, kind of ways students build projects. But I was at Harvard's undergrad. I worked for McKinsey for a couple of years, and I was definitely thinking about the MBA route. Ultimately decided to do the PhD route, so I went back to HBS for that. But in our organization, we've thought a lot about how the connectivity between what you do in university and also the few years after university is so deeply tied to the type of candidate that you are. And so, in my case, it was really a number of individual projects that I did, and I'll talk about two projects in a second that we've seen students do that that we believe have helped them get an edge. And in fact, some of their admission officers had indicated that it was impressive. For me, it was a couple of research projects, primarily looking at a new technology called the sociometer, which is looking at how you track interactions between people in an office. Kind of hilariously not useful at all during the pandemic, but at the time quite innovative. And how a couple of those projects for me, which was with a few different professors at HBS at the time, really, I think, made a really clear part of my story. And so I'm going to talk a bit about research and independent projects, but I think the more important kind of higher level message here for you as a candidate trying to build your profile for round one admissions is, okay, how do I show to an admission officer what I'm doing? And instead of just saying, hey, I'm really interested in banking, I'm really interested in tech, I really want to work in private equity, how do you actually show that instead of just saying that? So that's a big piece of this question. And I think a part of it is many of these business schools are now asking the question of, okay, well, you're interested in consulting. So for example, when I was at McKinsey, certainly consulting is seen as kind of a generalist field, but it's actually a generalist field that very quickly narrows into one thing. So as I think Amanda was saying earlier, a few students kind of come and saying, hey, I want to do consulting. Many students at the end of B school do end up doing consulting. But if you come into the school, and especially into the round one admissions, saying, hey, I'm interested in a degree in management, which is what an MBA is, but I'm also interested in applying it to this other area, whether it's in technology, biotech, fashion, marketing, whether it's in organizations, whatever it is. And you're going to have to prove to the admission officer, not only can I build up the chops, or do I have the chops on the business side, which is certainly going to be important, but also how do I show that I have a unique perspective on the other side of the house, whether it's technology, biotech, fashion, whatever it might be. And an independent project, I think, is one way to showcase that. There's certainly many ways to showcase it. I think probably the most direct one, though sometimes the least able to be adjusted by a candidate, is the work you're doing. So the job you have is going to be the first thing that admission officer is going to look at when they're looking at your resume. But also they're going to see things like the things that you've been doing outside of your work. And for candidates who have, say, a year or a year and a half before they're applying, this is probably one of the few levers that they have available to them. You could always switch jobs, but it's often impractical to do that prior to applying to an MBA program. So independent projects, whether that is organizing something that is, organizing a nonprofit in an area that you're interested in, whether it's doing a research project with a professor at a business school, whether it's creating a side hustle that showcases something you're interested in. Just a lot of the things that you're trying to prove in the essay itself. You're trying to prove, hey, I'm genuinely interested in this thing, in this area. And here's a proof point that I have. I started this company on the side that helps pair students with internship opportunities, for example. That could be an example. Or I've been mentoring students in computer science and helping young women enter into entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is something I'm really excited about. And I've seen for many students, particularly out of India, that there's often a shift when looking at the MBA, a shift from let's say we gave the example in the round one admissions, that engineering background, and then saying, let's say you went to a top engineering school, now you're looking to apply to a business school. How do you make that connection between the engineering degree that you've had, the expertise that you've had, and maybe you worked post that in engineering or computer science or whatever job might be, to an MBA? How do you make that connection? And these independent projects can be a useful way to do that by giving you a logical connection. I'll just give one example. We worked with a student who, this student is from Chennai, but was studying at NUS in Singapore, very focused on biomedical engineering, but wanted to do a master's degree in business. And so they worked on a project with a researcher at HBS on looking at the closed versus open innovation paradigm, which is essentially how corporations think about innovating off of new technology, and how that could be applied to a company in Chennai that was quickly innovating on developing a new type of defibrillator for during the beginnings of the pandemic. And this student did a lot of different things around it, spoke with a number of researchers in the open innovation paradigm, a few at Berkeley, a few at HBS, and ultimately created a really interesting case study, kind of HBS style case study on it. And when the student applied to different schools, a couple of admission officers even said, like, hey, one of the things we really were excited by was your depth of thought when it came to innovation. Is something that he really is excited about. He wants to be working in innovation labs, leading them up, pushing them forward. And the fact that you've done research on it, in fact, you've done a project on it outside of doing outside of being this excellent engineer, showed that the MBA or their master's program business actually connected to your interests. So in this case, the student used that connection of what they were doing. They used the project to make a bridge, a logical bridge in their essay between, hey, I'm an engineer, but I'm actually interested in business. I'm really interested in leading these innovation labs. Similarly, we actually had another student who went the other way, who was much more business focused. Previously had worked as a consultant, but was very interested in going to another level and actually using a more technical approach. So they were looking at getting to a more technical field post the MBA, but wanted to showcase that they had some of these technical chops because they were applying for this joint MS MBA. And so they actually did a project that was more focused on using machine learning, deep learning. In this instance, which actually connected to research, was around extracting cell nuclear. Not too important exactly what they did, but the more important piece is that they actually came from a non-technical background and did this project to show, hey, I'm a good fit for this MS MBA because I've actually done something, in this case with a researcher at Stanford, that is connected to it. So this is all to say that do you need to do an independent project? Do you need to do research to be accepted at this school? Like, certainly not. The more important fundamentals are, do you have jobs that align with your interests? Do you have a strong GMAT score? Do you have strong essays? But in the, say, the year time or year and a half time that you have an opportunity to create bridges between your interests and also explore your interests such that when you're applying to the MBA, you can be much more compelling with your profile. So I'll stop there and pass back to the Maya team.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. That was a great, insightful session. There are a couple of questions that have come up. I think we should answer. Ajay is asking whether so what is the outlook of colleges, particularly in the US, towards students from a legal background applying for MBA programs? Will my experience as a lawyer have any weightage during the admission process? I'll give my 2 bits to this, and possibly, Stephen, you could add. Yes, the universities are very welcoming A 1.5 years of experience will help. Apart from that, if you are able to showcase in your essay and your SOP why you are looking at an MBA along with your degree of law, your chances further improve. Stephen, would you want to add to this?
No, I think I agree with that. I think that showing that depth and the reasoning for why you want to make the switch is going to be important. But these are generalist degrees, and so they're not expecting you to have one particular career path before you apply.
Sure. There's one more question from another viewer who says, since you mentioned Masters Union, I would like to know possible B schools to target when a candidate has significant IT consulting experience of up to 8 years and is looking for a 1-year MBA program. Your options could be IGP, ISB, PGP Pro. You could also, in fact, look at IME MBA, the executive MBA. Those could possibly be your options when looking at India. So, yeah. Any other questions, anybody? Yes. Stephen, would you want to take this one?
Question.
Yeah.
So, okay, so for you to be competitive, I'm assuming you studied.
So the question for everybody's interest is they have a 3-year. So 3 years on revamping the bankruptcy for small family business, and have been successful to a certain extent. They're an MBA dropout and a BBA graduate. They've scored an averagely decent score for their academic years, and now part of a few NGOs. So as they've not worked for a formally big organization, do they stand a chance?
Yeah, I think so. I think for you to be competitive, if your scores are average, and I'll just we bucket ISB and Wharton in the same category. I think they'll be similar in terms of their kind of profile. I think you'll really need to show pretty strong acumen then in turning around your family's business. If that really has been how you've been spending the past few years, my sense is that plus a very strong GMAT score that showcases a level of kind of intellectual depth. The combination of those two things, I think, potentially could make you competitive. I think it'll be this will be, I think, challenging though if you don't have those two things. I don't know, Chowdhury, if you want to add anything to that.
Sure. All right. I'd now like to invite Amanda Natone next. She's GMAT expert at TPR and would throw light on the GMAT strategies. Over to you, Amanda.
All right, thank you. Let me get my screen share going here. Okay, here we go. Oh, sorry, bear with me for 1 second. Okay. Even though I've shared my screen many times before, it is making me, there we go. Okay. All right, it should be good. Can everyone see my screen?
So Amanda, you will have to share your screen from the bottom. There is a button. So right now the screen is not shared.
Right. It's giving me some, basically giving me some hassles here. Let me see if I can.
I see another question popping my screen, Amanda. If that's all right, I'll use this time to.
Yes, absolutely. If there's any questions that you want to answer.
Sure. So there's another question I see, which is 8 years of experience. Is it too much for an MBA candidate? Now, typically 3 years is what is the requisite. Nevertheless, more is not less in this case, and it's not a disadvantage. If you can justify why you want to pursue an MBA after 8 years of experience, I think this is good enough. Why not? Ritima, to answer your question, I'll again use this time, sorry. Ritima, your question is whether you're currently pursuing geography honors from Calcutta University. Will you be eligible to a top B school as a fresher candidate? Yes, there are some schools which are accepting of candidates without experience also. Consequences for a non-engineer to pursue an MBA? Yes, there are options. There are options for you, and there is scope as well. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, I looks like I'm in good shape. If you want to continue answering questions,
no, fine. I'm good. I've answered.
Okay. All right. I apologize for that. For whatever reason, my computer has decided to be chaos this morning. So, okay, everyone should be able to see my screen. So as they introduced me, I'm Amanda Nawatney. I have been with the Princeton Review in the US for 16 years and teach GMAT courses and have worked on some of the course development. So we're going to sort of do two parts today. I'm going to try to keep an eye on my time here, but we're going to first have to understand the GMAT and the way it works in order to know the best way to approach it. And then I will take you through some strategies and some sample questions to give you an idea kind of what we do and what sort of systematic approach you want to take in order to succeed on the test. So why take the GMAT? The answer is fairly obvious, as you heard from some of the admissions experts. The GMAT is highly valued. It's rated by business schools for business. And so it is a solid predictor of your success in business school. And that's why they really value your performance on it as an indicator of what sort of student you're likely to be. So the GMAT tests the skills that you're going to use in business school. And I want to emphasize that word skills. We should probably talk first about what's not on the GMAT. And the answer is business stuff is not on the GMAT. So you're not going to have to know anything about management or marketing or entrepreneurship or business strategies to succeed on this exam. What is on the GMAT is reasoning and analytical skills. So you're expected to do things like, demonstrate critical reasoning and be able to interpret data, evaluate arguments, show your quantitative reasoning. So when it comes down to it, what are you doing on the GMAT? What actually is being tested? And the answer is your problem solving skills, both in verbal and quantitative formats. So once you understand that, you realize that this is not the sort of test that you may have taken in school up to this point or in university. This is a completely different type of test, which means you have to think about it in a different way and prepare for it in a different way. So the GMAT is a computer adaptive test, which means it actually is adjusting the test and the path you take as you go through it. So in each section, you're going to start off with a question that's medium level of difficulty, right in the middle. If you get that question right, the computer is sitting there trying to figure you out. So when you get that first question right, they're going to say, okay, this person might be a better than average test taker. Let's see what happens if I give it a hard question. So you'll get a harder question if you get it right. You miss that medium question. The computer is going to shift you downwards, throw you an easier question. Now that may seem great, except the problem is your score is also being adjusted accordingly. So as your level of difficulty increases, it means that the floor for your score essentially is going to increase. So it's narrowing you down to a narrower score range as you go through the test. So if you really nail the first 10 questions on the test, you're in good shape. If you have a shaky performance in the first 10 questions, you're going to get sort of restricted to a scoring range that may not be as high as you would like it to be. So as you go through these questions, if you're missing them, they're going to get easier and easier. Say you got that easy question on the second one, correct. That's going to move you to a medium level question, and then you can adjust from there. So it's continually adjusting as you go, which means not all of the questions on these sections are equal. So really the ones that count are the ones that are in the very beginning of the section. So you have to make sure that you're taking the time to be as accurate as possible as you're going through the earlier questions, and then pick up the pace and be a little bit riskier essentially as you move through. So the sections of the GMAT, you'll have the quantitative section and the verbal section. These are the ones that count towards your composite score, as well as the integrated reasoning and an analytical writing assessment. Now, the GMAT gives you the power to go back there for a second. The GMAT gives you the power to actually choose which order you want to take these sections in. So I think there's 4 different combinations. So you can either start off with the integrated reasoning, the analytical writing, or you can start off with the quantitative or the verbal, depending on your preference. So the quant is 31 questions, 62 minutes, and it's essentially just relatively basic math. I say relatively because it's actually more advanced than most of the other graduate school exams that you see that involve math. But it's still, there's no calculus, there's really no trig or anything like that. It's just general knowledge in arithmetic, geometry, problem solving. You don't get a calculator for that, so you have to rely on your ability to do math on paper. The verbal section, 36 questions, 65 minutes. This is going through grammar, critical reasoning, reading comprehension, where you have to read a passage and then answer questions about it. So again, it's still problem solving. It's still reasoning. It's just a slightly different type of problem solving. Integrated reasoning is the 30-minute section. It has 12 questions, but most of those are multiple parts, and there's no partial credit here, which is important to make note of, because that means that you are going to have to make sure that you are as accurate as you can possibly be on that section. So what is the integrated reasoning test? This is essentially data interpretation and making inferences. So, arguably testing skills that are sort of like the most real world application type skills that you might see as you go through the business world. The analytical writing assessment, you have to look at an argument, much like the critical reasoning questions on the verbal, but longer. Look at an argument that will be flawed and explain essentially why it's flawed and what it could do better. And you have 30 minutes to do that. All right, come on. Oh, sorry. This is... Okay. There we go. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. It's hanging up a little bit. So scoring for the quantitative and the verbal, it's the same. It's the 0 to 60 scale, although really the scoring range is 6 to 51. And that's actually how GMAT reports it at this point. It's extremely rare to score outside the 6 to 51 range. Those are based on the adaptivity of the exam. So 3 things: the number of questions that you get right, the level of difficulty of those questions. So the harder the question, the more it's going to be valued, and also the number of questions that you get answered, which means you want to make sure that you are not leaving any blanks at the end of the test. The integrated reasoning is a scale from 1 to 8. Again, there's no partial credit there. And it's 1 point increments. So you actually can score very highly without necessarily answering every question on there, so long as the questions that you've done are done correctly. Analytical writing is half point increments from 0 to 6. So you have 2 people who grade that, and then you get an average score out of there. Let me see if I can get rid of this partial credit thing that I don't want to see. So your total score actually comes from the verbal and quantitative. Those are combined to make your composite score in 10 point increments from 200 to 800. So we've talked a lot today with the admissions officials of, for some of those upper level business schools, you really kind of want to make sure that you are above a 700, but it's only one of many factors in your admissions. And so you can see here some score percentiles. 750 is the top 2%, 700 is 88th percentile, so about the top 12%. Your median score right around a 568. So understanding how the GMAT works is really essential to thinking about some of the key strategies. One of the major ones is your time management. So knowing the adaptive nature of the test and knowing that the earlier questions essentially are more important, because getting those early questions correct is what allows you to move into that higher level of difficulty and therefore that higher score range. It means you have to know how to manage your time wisely on this test. You don't want to spend equal time on every question. You should be spending more time moving slower and more methodically early in the test. That said, you also don't want to get hung up on any single question. So really spending more than 4 minutes on a single question is going to make it very hard for you to answer every question on the test. And then you get dinged for not having answered every single question. So you do want to make sure that you're considering your pacing. That's something that we help our students figure out is, how much time should they be spending on each section of the test, essentially. And then, of course, good old process of elimination. If you've ever taken a multiple choice test, you probably have used this, and you might know that often, particularly with verbal, it's easier to figure out which answers are incorrect than it is to find the one quote right answer. And so it's an extremely valuable strategy. Where I find that it's actually undervalued is on things like the quantitative, where sure, you can go through and you can solve the problem, but is that the quickest way for you to get there? If you're keeping an eye on your answer choices and constantly thinking about what's incorrect, that can actually perhaps get you to the correct answer before you actually finish the problem. So we're going to take a look at a few sample questions. Just want to check my time here real quick. Looks like we're doing okay. So this is an example of a quantitative question, slightly unusual format called data sufficiency. So the point of these data sufficiency questions is not to actually get a numerical answer. The point of the data sufficiencies is to figure out whether you can get a numerical answer from the information that you're given. So your answer choices for these are actually always the same, where you have the option of either of these statements alone being sufficient, neither one on its own being sufficient, but both of them together would be able to get you an answer, each one individually being sufficient, or you don't have enough information. They don't work on their own, they don't work together, you would need additional information. So if we look at something like this, wanting to know whether x plus y is greater than 8, doesn't matter specifically what the value of x plus y is. It's just the question is, can I know definitively that it is greater than 8? Could I get one and only one answer to that question? So first we'd want to look at statement 1. I'm trying to point and it's getting ahead of me here, but you notice if we just subtract the 3 from both sides of that, I'm left with x plus y equals 10. Which means at that point, I know that statement 1 is sufficient. Back up here a little bit. And so I could eliminate any answer that didn't say that statement 1 is sufficient, which means that answer choices B, C, and E would always be gone in that scenario. And so just from the first statement, I'm already down to 2 answers here, either answer choice A or answer choice D. So now when we go to look at the second statement, you could probably see that it's easy enough to divide this equation by 2. And once again, I'm left with x plus y equals 10. So you notice that not only did I get one and only one solution from each of these statements, I got the same solution for both of these statements. So because each one yielded me one and only one solution, I know that my answer here is going to be D, that each statement alone is sufficient. So this is a format that can be really tricky. It's important to have a strategy for it, but you just have to bear in mind that it doesn't really matter what the answer to the question is. It matters, can you get one and only one definitive answer? All right, and that's an example of the type of math that you'll see on the quantitative as well with algebra. Also see lots of geometry, things like that. Okay, so moving on to the verbal. Here we have a critical reasoning question. So this is one piece of the verbal, and these can be sort of intimidating because you have these prompts where they're giving you an argument and then asking a certain question on it. You actually would want to start with the question. Let's see if I can get an arrow drawn here. So I want to start there, because if I read that question first, I'm going to know what kind of work I need to do with the prompt. So here, this is asking me which of the following would most weaken the commission's conclusion, which means I need to read this and see what the conclusion is and what sort of evidence they're using to back up that conclusion. So if we read through this, an inquiry into farming practices revealed that the smaller the number of acres a farmer cultivates, the more types of crops the farmer plants. An agricultural commission reasoned that farmers who operate smaller farms plant different crops in an attempt to qualify for as many crop subsidies as possible. So there is our evidence, or there is our conclusion, right? We can see that the commission has concluded that smaller farmers are trying to get as many crop subsidies as possible. So what we would want to do then is think about any holes that we see in their reasoning that we might want to take a look at. There we go. That we might want to take a look at. And so their justification here is the number of acres, the fewer number of acres they have, the more types of crops they plant. What would make us think that that's so that they can get multiple subsidies? So we're going to look for something that would question the link between the types of crops and the number of subsidies. So I could see with answer choice A, it specifically says crop subsidies are based on crop output of previous years. It doesn't have anything to do with the number of acres. I'm giving an alternate justification, and that would help weaken the conclusion. If you take a look at some of the other answers we have here, you can see a lot of things that aren't related. So the acreage of a farm being an accurate arbiter of its potential crop output. That's sort of established in the premise already. It's not really going to cause us to weaken the argument. You can see that C, whether the commission has experience in farming, is not relevant at all. Crop output on large farms, not relevant. Now answer choice E, subsistence farms rather than commercial gain. Well, we never actually said what kinds of farms these are, whether they are commercial or subsistence. And so that wouldn't really do anything to the conclusion. So you're really looking at what was it that appeared in the conclusion that is unexplained, and what would make me question the justification there. So it's really being able to look at these arguments and think critically about where some of the holes might be, and then either fixing or exploiting them accordingly. We're going to come back to the verbal in just a second. I want to just kind of quickly show you what the integrated reasoning looks like. So this is a fairly typical setup where you'll have a chart. We can see what this one looks like where we're measuring tunnel traffic. And so you would want to start off by seeing if you can understand what information you're being given here without necessarily having to read all the text. And I think with this one, it's fairly straightforward that you can see we're looking at the number of vehicles in certain times on a given weekday. Oops, that's a little out of place, but a typical one question that you might see, and it's possible that you also would have multi-part questions with these, is it wants me to measure the approximate percent change in commercial traffic between midnight and 5 a.m. Well, so I could sit there and I could start to calculate this, but the question is, do I? And the answer is probably not. So if you take a look at your commercial traffic between midnight to 5 a.m. and 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., and I want to know what percent more there was, we can take a look at those and actually do something we call ballparking, right? It asks specifically for an approximation. So you can eliminate quite a few answers here just by seeing that it's much more than 1%. It's definitely not nearly as much as 223% more. That would be more than doubling. And so we end up really getting it down to B or C, and you essentially could see that there's a difference of about 200, a little bit more, which would be roughly 1/3 of 652. And so you can get to your answer being 34%. And that's really all you would need to do. So this is a good example of using the answer choices to speed up the process and seeing that the answer is not always necessarily to do the question. That's not always the best way to do it. It's really to think about what answers are available to you and what seems to be the most likely. All right. Okay, I'm trying to get to a sentence correction question. Need to find my cursor again. Or I can just do, there we go. All right, so 34%, about 1/3 of 650. Okay, so here is, coming back to the verbal, an example of a sentence correction question. So the GMAT tests English grammar for whatever reason, and some fairly arcane rules of English grammar. This actually is an example of something pretty common, which is subject-verb agreement. So I'm going to be attempting to draw on the screen again. We'll see how I can get back into this. So if we take a look first at this question, and you can see that underlined portion, which is the part that we're going to be working on fixing. So the basic organization of the honeybee colony having thousands of infertile female bees called workers help demonstrate why beekeepers believe, you can see this, come on. There we go. Believe that it relies heavily on the female bee. I just needed to get that back in view for myself. So what we would want to do there is look and see if we can find a particular error. Now I can see when we read this, I have a verb underlined, the word help. You would want to look for a subject verb agreement error when you see verbs underlined, because that's one of the more common types of errors that we'll see. And so when I look for the subject, you notice we have a bunch of extra phrases, but what help or helps demonstrate why beekeepers would believe this, the answer is going to be basic organization, which is singular. That means that I need my verb to also be singular. There we go. And so I can eliminate any answer that doesn't do that, which includes our original version. So answer choice A is going to be out because it has help. And I also want to look for any answer choices that would repeat that, like answer choice D. So now as I go through my other answers, I want to make sure that I'm not changing any intended meanings and that I'm not making any new errors. So answer choice B, having thousands of infertile female bees that are called workers helps demonstrate why beekeepers believe that they rely. So we did manage to fix the original error. However, something new here, which is they rely, right? What's they? Well, now it becomes, is it beekeepers? Is it workers? All I know is that it's definitely not basic organization anymore. And so answer choice B would be out. Answer choice C, with its thousands of infertile bee makers, you notice that this repeats the same error that answer choice B did. I can get rid of that. And I'm down to answer choice E already, which if we take a look at it, we can see that it did in fact fix our original error. And it didn't make that new error that our other answers did. And so this would be the answer that we would want to go with. So it's a systematic approach of identifying common errors and then looking to fix them while also avoiding any new errors. All right. So the bottom line, clear my writing here. The bottom line is you can get the score you need on the GMAT. You just need the right strategies and the right approach. So I did earlier mention our adaptive tools. So just to give you some examples of this, because of the adaptive nature of the GMAT is unique, we've leaned into that and want to make sure that you're really having that same sort of adaptive customized experience. So our video lessons are adaptive. If you answer a question right, you can move on to the next thing. There's no sense in spending time on things you already know. Adaptive drills, just like the real test. So if you miss a question, it actually would probably drop you down in difficulty. Get it right, it's going to raise you up in difficulty. So you can see, for example, here, as this person gets more questions right, they're moving up in difficulty. We also have something called Drill Builder. This is exclusive, but it will use your practice tests and your drills to put together a series of questions that will, most target your specific areas of growth. You also have the option to go to specific drills and customize that way. So that is our program. Those are some of the key strategies we use. And if anyone has questions here, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yes, Amanda, there are a couple of questions that came our way. I'll just pose some of them to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm scrolling through the chat here. I see some good ones.
One question is, for the fall intake, when is the right time to write the GMAT?
I would recommend, so you essentially want to have, you would want to take it, your official scores are released about 3 weeks after you take it. However, you want to leave yourself a buffer to be able to take it more than once if you can. And you're able to retake the test every 16 days. So if you really want to white knuckle it and cut it close, you probably could take it about 6 to 8 weeks out from your application. I would recommend probably doing it 3 or 4 months ahead of your deadline so that you have a little bit of extra time to retake it in case you need to.
Okay. There's one more question that I think is more admissions focus. So possibly I'll take that. Yeah. So one question is, are we also providing MS in IS? Yes, so Manya Education is servicing students for servicing students across levels. We service students for MBA, PhD, Masters, UG as well. We have an excellent track record, in fact, of placing students in to top information systems programs across the globe into universities such as Carnegie Mellon and various universities. In fact, many universities, in fact, information systems is offered by the computer science department along with the business school. So the process that is for applying for MSIS is followed, which is followed by the business school, is the same as a business school application process. There's one more question. Are the universities in USA that accept applicant? So are there universities in USA that accept applicants with 15 years of education at bachelor's level without work experience? 15 years of education is quite readily accepted in the US MBA admissions, though not typically for the MS. Zero work-ex is difficult to get you through an MBA admit. You'd possibly want to aim for MIM programs. Yeah. If there are any other questions for Amanda, I would love to take them up.
I did see a question about a low integrated reasoning score affecting admissions, and maybe our admissions folks from the universities, if that doesn't look like they're still here. So the integrated reasoning is not factored into the composite, and so for many schools it doesn't matter a whole lot. That is sort of dependent on the school, and so you'd want to check with them there every now and then. You run into one that will weight it, but generally a lot of them aren't really pay much attention to the integrated reasoning score, even despite GMAT's best efforts to get that weighted in. And again, you can, if you focus on accuracy with the integrated reasoning and making sure that each item you're doing, every part is correct, you can increase that score pretty easily. Usually when I look at students who are scoring 1s and 2s on the integrated reasoning, it's because they're getting the questions half right. So it shouldn't greatly affect admissions. It does depend on the school, but it also is a score that can be improved if you have a different way of approaching that section.
One more question, Amanda, on 650 GMAT scores at what level from 0 to 10? With 10
that is, I actually, okay, just so I can go back to that percentile slide so I can show you specifically. That would be, it's a pretty solid score. That would be 72nd percentile. So you're well within the top 30% of students. So it's a solid score. It'll get you into some good US business schools. It's not as competitive for the top ones.
Okay. I think Amanda's already answered. Does low IR score affect admissions? So yes, Amanda, I think you've already taken that one.
Right. Yeah, it definitely will affect it less than a low composite score. So, which is why most people focus their energy on the quant and verbal.
Okay. There's another question. Software engineer 2019 who was working on skills, talent, calling, purpose, and didn't take up a software MNC job opportunity and grew much in skills, but right now wants to resume his career. How will this affect his career in MBA or GMAT? So do you mean, just a moment, missing the name here. Do you do you mean, Naveen, that you've given up on a software MNC job, or was there no work experience? We'll need clarification around this. One more question for you, Amanda, in the interim. How quickly can an IT working professional prep for their GMAT? How quickly can they do that?
So we generally recommend a timeline of about 9 to 12 weeks, depending on what sort of time you have available to you. Minimum 9 weeks, I would say. So if you have an extremely heavy workload, if you're working more than 40 hours a week, you probably would want to start a little bit earlier so that you could space that out and be able to do a little bit less every day. But it is possible to prep within a few months. It really depends on what other commitments you have.
Okay, Naveen, if you don't have a work experience at all and you've still been growing on your skills, you can get an admit into an MBA. You need to justify the time that you've spent in developing your skills and take it up that way. Amanda, we have another question. How much improvement in the composite score is realistically possible?
Well, you get what you put into it. We do actually have a course that comes with the guarantee of a 700 or higher if you started out at, I'm actually looking for the specifics of this. I believe it's 150 point improvement or a 700 or higher if you have started out at our threshold qualifying score for that, which actually I believe is 640. So it's realistic to get, up to probably 150 points. I have seen more than that. I've seen less than that. So it depends on how much time you're able to put into it. 620. So we're guaranteeing at least 80 points. I have seen higher score improvements than that. So if that gives you an idea, 80 points should be well within reach. If you're really working hard over a long period of time, you can absolutely achieve more than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great. Naveen, to share further details with you on your question, you need to, if you have a strong GMAT or if you have a good GPA, that will also help improve your chances for your admit with no work ex. Another question, Amanda, any notable benefits of choosing international exams like GMAT over CAT besides moving to a different country? This question's coming to the second time, yeah.
You might be able to also offer some perspective being local. I think, the advantage of the GMAT is, as we were saying, and as our admissions panelists were saying, that it is designed to be a good predictor of your success in business school. It's designed to test the particular school skills that you need to do well. So I would say that probably it would be a major benefit is the name recognition and the design of the test. And of course, the flexibility of being able to use those scores to apply about anywhere. If you have any additional input on that, though, you might be able to offer the local perspective there.
Not really. If you are looking at local or Indian colleges, then a CAT is also a great option for you. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the next session. From here, I'll want to thank you, Amanda, for your time. I'd now want to invite Vineet Khanna, who heads Product SPrep. And this is over to you, Vineet.
Thank you, Chagu. Thank you. That was a wonderful session, Amanda. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being a part of the Manya family today. This session is about the changing face of the GMAT at Manya. And we've heard a lot from our colleges and college experts, from Amanda at the Princeton Review about the GMAT strategies. I think it's very important that when we decided that we want to take the GMAT exam, where should we prep, and what's the right kind of prep for each one of us. And so this session is about the kind of prep Manya does and how we can make your journey to the GMAT score that you're looking for a success. I'll just share my screen and take it from there. Is my screen visible to everyone?
No, not yet. Not yet. Now, yes.
Thank you. So yes, Manya, the Princeton Review, the changing face of Manya's GMAT. I'll quickly go through the contents. The Manya Edge, why the Princeton Review advantage that we bring, and the new GMAT products at Manya. Important to understand. I think it's very critical when everyone is talking about scores. What are the kind of outcomes that students at Manya get? So more than 80% of our students score above 650 in the GMAT exam. The national average for GMAT in India is 603, and the Manya average is 704. I think this by itself speaks a lot about the kind of prep Manya does and the kind of scores that the students at Manya are able to get. 62% of the Manya test studiers have scored above 700. And the most important thing is our average score improvement is up to 250 points. Like Amanda mentioned, it's all about how much time you give into the prep and how you prep. But over the years that when we have taught at Manya, we come to realize that the kind of score improvement that we are able to bring about is up to 250 points, in the kind of prep that we do. Even more important is that, how, so a lot of people are talking about these scores and how do you judge who's better. One very important thing at Manya is that all the scores that we publish are actual scorecard scores from the students. So any score, any testimonial that is put up at the Manya website or through the Manya communication is supported by the actual student scorecard and hence highly authentic. The very next big thing that big advantage that we bring is the trainer's expertise. It's very, as we have prepped, in our school, in our colleges, we always try to understand who our professors are and what kind of expertise they bring. I think it's a very important highlight at Manya, the Princeton Review, is the Princeton Review certification of the trainers, which is an industry benchmark by itself. We have to understand that if you have about 100 trainers who kind of qualify to train, only 35% of these 100 trainers would succeed in becoming the Princeton Review Manya certified trainers. And it's quite rigorous. The trainers put in a lot of effort before they are got into the program and they are allowed to teach at the Manya Institute. The certification comes from the Princeton Review in the US, and it is not an easy training certificate to get. I think we are very proud of the fact that all our trainers also take the actual GMAT exam. Trainers who are trained for the GRE take the GRE exam, and most of them get perfect scores. Or rather, I think all of them now get perfect scores. So it's a very strong and a very systematic led training process before one is taken into Manya, and it starts teaching you how to prep. Just few quick points on the Princeton Review advantage. One of the strongest things that Princeton Review brings is the pedagogy. And how do we teach through the Princeton Review pedagogy is using and engaging as per the Socratic method of teaching. And this is very interesting. It actually doesn't make you prep like you would have probably prepped in school. However, it holds you and engages you and teaches you and guides you to the kind of learning that you really want to do, the kind of engagement that you want to do and answer questions. I'll take a very quick example. How did we actually learn how to cycle? So we had someone, who used to hold a cycle, from behind while we were cycling, and actually left the cycle after a few minutes. We kind of tumbled. Again, he held on to the cycle, and we probably went on for another 100 meters till a point of time when once this person left the cycle, we were able to cycle. And that's exactly how the Socratic method is. It's not going to spoon feed you, but it's going to lead you to the right kind of answers. It's going to change your logical thinking, and it's going to help you understand how you should answer the questions. And that's the strength of the Princeton Review pedagogy. Like Amanda mentioned, all the Princeton Review tests are stimulated, and they are like the actual GMAT exams. As the actual exams have questions getting harder and easier basis how you attempt, so does these actual test in the portal that we have of Princeton Review works. In addition to that, we also have a drill builder, which is, if you want to prep early in the day or you want to prep late at the night, and you want, the portal or the adaptive tool to understand and help you prep better. This is what we offer at Princeton Review. It's an adaptive student portal, which will make and understand your adaptive needs, your prep needs, and create a journey for you that will prep you better. And finally, there are office hours, and like Amanda mentioned, if you are looking for additional perspectives, you're looking for more advice, you're looking for an answer which you feel is more sorted and required, you have, we have the office hours, which is a direct connect with all the Princeton Review trainers in New York, and you can listen to their videos, you can interact with them, you can, you can pick up sections and questions which you have stronger need to ask, and they will be happy to help you out. Let's quickly talk about the new GMAT products. And what we realized during our journey is that one does not fit all. We have become very individualized in our needs. We are different in our personality types, and our products at Manya are suited to different personality types that we are. The first is the young professional. Someone who's probably in the age of 21 to 26 years, has a work experience of 1 to 5 years. He's ambitious, motivated, wanting to study, wanting to take the GMAT and take the career to the next heights. is looking for global prep, is super busy with work, finding it very difficult to get back to the study mode, and really is slightly confused within how to manage the prep and how to manage his work and life balance. And that's where we come in. And we've got two products. One is the Manya Ace Pro, and the other is the Manya Ace Pro Blend. The Blend is a self-paced product for working professionals, and the Manya Ace Pro is a classroom or a live online product. Both of them offer a score improvement guarantee. They are also well structured. There are a lot of interventions, periodic assessments, progressive reviews. Most importantly, what does a working professional need is either late evening batches, weekend batches, early morning doubt clearing sessions, and we offer all of that at Manya. The second is a student. Someone who could be at the age of 20 to 22 years with 0 to 1 year of experience. So he like Amanda and like, a lot of earlier panelists mentioned, India by far has a slightly stronger hand in quant. A lot of students that we know are slightly better in quant. And a lot of them are looking for more comprehensive verbal and reasoning areas to work at. And they are all very tech savvy, very gadget friendly. And they're yet wanting to understand how is the right way that we can prep. We've got the right product for you, which is a GMAT Ace student. Again, comes with a score improvement of up to 250 points. Here the prep is designed in a way which will take you to verbal fundamentals. And for students who find maths or quant slightly easier, it also introduces and takes you to the advanced maths. For people who are looking for a more perfect score in quant and a high score in the verbal section, this is the right kind of product for you. Then comes the GMAT Ace 720. This is typically a high scorer product. We've realized that a lot of students are looking for high scores and are very clear that in their journey for an MBA or an MIM, they want to go to the top-notch schools and are looking for a 720 or more score. This product is specifically designed to get you a score of 720 and more. It has advanced prep questions, be it quant or be it verbal. A lot of detailed analysis. And for this kind of a person, he's looking, time is an essence. He wants to do things faster. He knows a lot, but he's yet looking to know more. And he needs to push to his limits so that he's able to prep better and stronger. And we've got the GMAT Ace 720 Plus. Again, this is a very interesting product. And like Amanda mentioned earlier, here we are giving you a score guarantee assurance of 720 as the minimum. Obviously, the harder you prep, you can easily cross the threshold of 720 also. But we assure a score guarantee of 720. There would be a threshold of entry for this product. And then we have the senior professional who is beyond the age of 26 years, more than 5 years of work experience, is already a business leader, is yet looking to take his career into the next level. He's very result oriented, focused, has a very hectic schedule. But it's been quite a while that he has studied, but yet wants to do the GMAT and yet wants to go and increase. So what is the kind of perfect plan that is for him? And we have the GMAT EA or the executive assessment. I think we would be one of the very few players, very few coaching, test prep players who would be doing an executive assessment course. And finally, the one-on-one for people who are looking for completely personalized one-on-one prep. We have the one-on-one program, which is super personalized. Again, comes with all the products that we have come with the score guarantee. The one-on-one comes with a score guarantee of up to 120 points. Flexible timings, you can choose your timing. You create your own study plan. If your prep is, if you need more prep in quant, the trainer will connect with you, will create a plan designed to suit your needs and your requirements. And a few of our GMAT ACE heroes. Thank you. I'll be happy to take any questions if there are.
Vineet, thank you for this presentation. Himanshu, can we have you now for the closing remarks?
Thanks, Gaurav, but I'm not sure whether I would be able to add any value to such a thought-provoking session. From the start till end, what really came out was the expertise. I'm sure from the starting, the first session where we brought different perspectives of how MBA admissions have changed to now getting into details of into what expertise do we bring in test prep and admissions counseling. It has been a really thought-provoking session. What I would also want to point out is that the questions that some of our participants asked were really brain-wrecking and really show how the students are thinking about their careers. How even after having a work ex and different and diverse backgrounds, they intend to do an MBA and pursue education to excel their careers. I'm sure that a lot of questions would be there from those students and participants, and we're sure that we'll be sharing our contact details post the session. I'll just give one piece of advice to everybody who intends to pursue their post-graduation MBA from US. Please plan in advance. The aim is to get into the best college. There are always consultants like Manya, the Princeton Review, who would be able to help you with achieving your aim, your dream of studying abroad. But to let us help you, you have to start planning in advance. If you have to do your MBA from a good college, please, please, please ensure that you are planning it at least a year and a half in advance. What that lets you do is help you understand the process well, helps you understand through research what kind of colleges that you are intending to do. And the persona of each college is very different, and the kind of students that each college is looking at is different. So through research, understanding which are the colleges that will help you achieve your dream of excelling your career in the stream that you want, and how to choose it is extremely critical. So a hasty, and like Amanda also pointed out in the beginning itself, that if you have to give your GMAT, it has to be at least 3.5-4 months prior to the deadlines that are there for the MBA colleges. So the prep has to actually start a year and a half behind prior to the application deadlines. Please, if you have done enough research, get in touch with some experts like the Manya the Princeton Review, or anybody that you intend to go to, and share your aims, vision, ideas with them, what you're doing, how do you want to excel, and how consultant like Manya the Princeton Review can help you achieve those dreams. It will take a lot of planning into building the right profile for the right colleges, researching which colleges give you the best option to excel your career, what preparation do you need to do in terms of standardized tests, building your profile, writing your SOPs, giving right LORs, preparing a great CV, right application in terms of round ones like Charu mentioned earlier, and giving the absolutely perfect perspective when you're sitting in front of the interview panel. I'm sure that if the preparation is started well within time, the chances of getting into the right college is absolutely there. Some students also ask that with a score of 650, is it a good score to get into a good college? When you're applying for an MBA program, it is not only the score, it is the overall profile that matters the most. It is how your vision and university's vision is aligned. These perspectives matter a lot. So please start early, please prepare well, please get in touch with the right consultants who can help you achieve your dream of studying in a university of your choice and excelling your career. If you have any questions, do write into us. We will be sharing the contact details post this, and we'll be happy to help you through our expertise. Thank you. Gaurav, over to you.
Thank you, Himanshu, and thank you, Vineet, Charu, and all the other speakers for such an enlightening session. If you do not have any more questions, I would also thank all the students for joining us today. Thank you. Take care of yourself. Good night, and look forward to talking to you more. Thank you, Himanshu. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.